You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. You're watching Force 13's live coverage of Super Typhoon Goni, which is about to make landfall. Philippine name Rolly, of course. I'm sure you know all about it by now. Not very common that we're streaming at an orthodox time locally. Of course, it is just after 3:30 in the morning, I believe. So there's a good reason why we are here at this time. And that's because we have probably the biggest typhoon threat for the Philippines as a whole since Typhoon Haiyan in 2013. It's that bad. It is an extremely powerful tropical cyclone. It's got winds of approximately 195 miles per hour, which is a staggering amount. That's about 310 kilometers per hour. Sustained winds with higher gusts. An estimated central pressure number crunched by our team at 876 millibars. I mean, I'm not sure what even to say about that. And landfall imminent in the next hour or so on Catanduanes, and then onto the Bicol region of Luzon. So we've got a lot to talk about right now. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our extensive team consisting right now of Jacob, Isaac, Thomas, Amy, myself, Leahy. It's got your nickname there, Ryan Leahy, Ryan North, Strat, and Euxinator.
Hello.
Hello to you all.
Well, good morning, I guess. Good evening, wherever. Morning in the Philippines, very early morning. But yeah, this is a very, very dangerous storm. Words really can't express how dangerous this is, really. I mean, 195 mile an hour winds is absolutely nothing to really... I don't know what else is going to make you... but yeah, this is a terrible storm, and I sincerely hope that everyone in its path is taking necessary precautions and is preparing for the worst.
We'll fix this screen in just a minute. I'm trying to find the right window. There we go. This is the latest radar shown on Isaac's screen right now, showing quite clearly the storm's eye wall. Shall we comment on that, Isaac?
It's, I mean, I don't really know what else to say other than that it's incredible. That outer eye wall, you can still kind of see it, but it appears to be a little bit weaker. Just textbook, high-end Category 5 Super Typhoon they're talking about here, really dangerous storm.
This is something else.
Exactly.
What do we think about the, well, actually, Thomas, you're mostly involved with the latest intensity estimate. Do you want to talk us through it?
Yeah, so 195 miles per hour, 876 millibars, courtesy of Devin Williams. We do have pressure estimates for all of these intensities. Basically, Devin went through every single storm similar to Goni when we had reconnaissance in the 70s, and he figured out what pressure would go with each intensity for a storm around Goni's size. So that was incredible work by him. He made sure they were the right latitudes and everything. When it comes to the actual wind speed that we went with, JMA, JTWC, ADT, my own subjective Dvorak, and Devin's Dvorak all got a T8.0, which does equate to 195 miles per hour. So there was just overwhelming evidence to support a 195 mile per hour intensity. That's what ATCF is running with now as well. And I would make the assumption that the JTWC will follow at their 21 UTC update.
It's blowing up even now as well. Size in terms of the cloud tops. I mean, it's sort of having a bit of a Haiyan appearance about it at these current hours.
Yeah, Devin's saying it's 1 pixel away from 200 for him, which is crazy, to say the least.
there's no way to say this other than this is the absolute worst case scenario for the Philippines here, with this thing's coming on shore. Expectations were, 2.5 days ago, 2 days ago, yesterday, this morning, that this system would be winding down at least somewhat by the time it got to shore. It absolutely has just done the complete opposite. The latest ATCF numbers, which is likely what the JTWC is going to go with at their next update, is 170 knots, which is 195 miles an hour or 315 kilometers per hour. So this thing has ramped up to a new peak intensity literally right before coming on shore in Catanduanes.
Astonishing. From what I've heard, and I've not seen it myself yet, but PAGASA will be going with Super Typhoon and Signal 5.
Yes, we just got word from PAGASA that, well, Super Typhoon Rolly, as they are calling it, has intensified into a super typhoon, and they will be issuing Signal 5 warnings for the first time in history.
Is it?
I believe. I believe it's the first time that they've issued, because they introduced it after Haiyan. They introduced Signal 5 warnings in 2015, and the only other storm that would be strong enough to support Signal 5 warnings was Haima in 2016, and I know that was way offshore, and I don't think that had Signal 5 warnings, so this has to be the first time.
Bit late though by the looks of things, because the storm's about to make landfall.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's
Very
very useful
island is
now.
more or less getting the eye wall already.
Well,
I know
absolutely.
we've
The island of Catanduanes is getting the eye wall, and the eye is about to reach it. And how long will that be? Maybe half an hour.
Well, I mean, we've been preaching it, the past several days now, as we've done these live events and video updates, that everyone should have been preparing well ahead of time. That time to prepare really was going to run out yesterday evening, local time at the absolute latest, as conditions were going to rapidly deteriorate. They certainly have done so on Catanduanes now. But, the government was taking this pretty seriously. 200,000 people were given evacuation orders, and hopefully everyone that wasn't given evacuation orders but is in the path of this absolute monster of a system has taken all the precautionary measures necessary. If you're in Catanduanes or Bicol right now, it really is too late to take any new preparatory measures if you haven't done so already.
As always, despite these testing circumstances, we will be taking comments and questions. Start your message with Force13 all in text on our YouTube chat, and on Facebook you can also get in touch. I don't know if any of our team will be watching the chat there, I hope so. But our Philippine team, I imagine we'll be hearing from some of them a little bit later. They're still resting up ahead of this storm. Ike in particular, who is in Laguna. Obviously the storm is not quite there yet, but he's going to be very busy in the coming hours.
Yeah, just a quick question to answer as well from the chat. People are asking, what is Signal 5? So, what is the wind, speed that they want to say it's going to be to issue that? If I'm not mistaken, it's just for them anything Super Typhoon or above, correct?
I think so.
From what I know, don't quote me on this, but I believe it is, I want to say it's 137 miles per hour, 10 minutes sustained. That's the only thing that would make sense to me if they're that rare that this is the first time in its five-year history that it's been issued. So I don't know. If someone wants to quote me on that, then.
In terms of wind speed, they issue them when the winds are at or more than 220 kilometers an hour. Just for a reference, and then they issue them roughly around 12 hours lead time in the event of a storm.
Well, this is 1 hour lead time, and it's not even official on their website as far as I can see. But this has been 300 kilometers per hour pretty much since this time yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, it's been extremely intense, and I think that the most remarkable thing about it is that it's held its intensity for so long. We were expecting weakening up to this point. I am extremely surprised with how well the storm's been performing as of late. And for those in the Philippines, I'm hoping that those preparations were rushed to completion, because this storm is bearing down right now. We have less than an hour until landfall in Catanduanes, so not good news. They're in the eye wall right now. I wouldn't be surprised to see them getting 175 plus mile an hour winds in short order, if not already.
Oh dear. Here are some questions then about, well, a lot of the biggest questions are whether 200 miles per hour is possible or indeed likely. I guess you can imagine a lot of people talking about that, but it is just a number, and it's just the 5 miles an hour on top of the 195 that we already have.
Yeah, when it
Yeah.
gets to 195 or 200 mile an hour, there's no difference really.
Yeah, you know, if you're Catanduanes right now, you know, whether or not this in post-analysis or currently is going to have a 5 mile an hour change in what the operational intensity is not going to matter particularly much to you. What should matter is that you have a Category 5 super typhoon that's about to come onshore in the next hour, and that whole island is in the western eyewall of this monster right now.
You know, we talk about these semantics a lot, but regardless of 195 or 200, I don't see it becoming 200, at least operationally. But I could eat my words here in a little bit. We'll see. But yeah, I'd say regardless of that, regardless of the semantics, this is a devastating typhoon at the stage 8 on the CDPS scale, on the verge of stage 9. So this is not something to scoff at. This is exceptionally dangerous.
And we keep looking at the rapid scan on the inset there at the bottom left-hand side. I do wonder whether this has started to turn west just now.
It wouldn't
Or
be
is
particularly
turning.
surprising because that's been the
It's turning,
expectation
yeah.
for some time, that it would try to turn more due west than west-southwest by the time it was approaching this general longitude of the Philippines. It's just unfortunate that it got so far south to the first place that it's going to be coming straight onshore of Catanduanes now instead.
We've got a new position estimate as of 29 minutes past that it's 25 kilometers offshore. And that's the center of the eye. Given that the eye size is approximately 40-ish kilometers in diameter, pretty much the edge of the eye now moving over land.
Yeah. How quickly has the storm moved in the past couple hours? Because I know when we were talking last, it was about 20 kilometers an hour. I have to assume it's accelerated a bit since then, if landfall's coming down this early.
In the last 1 hour, it's moved about 28 kilometers.
Yeah, that acceleration really pushes up the timetable here, and unfortunately, it's been able to intensify throughout all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the
You have
opposite.
some.
Yeah.
I was just going to say it. We have a couple bits of news here. First of all, from our chief hurricane analyst, Evan Williams, he is saying this storm will not be getting to 200 miles per hour, and the cloud appearance has actually degraded a little bit in the past few frames. So
I'm seeing that, yes.
So yeah, I don't see this being 200. We continue to get questions about it. I just want to make it clear now, unless this pulls off some sort of absolutely insane thing I've never seen before, this will not be getting to 200 miles per hour.
No.
Also, subjective satellite analysis courtesy of NOAA, which is different than the JCWC, also going with a T8.0. No surprise there. So every single Dvorak fix from every single official agency that we've gotten so far recently has been a T8.0 supporting that 195 mile per hour estimate.
It's just astonishing. Eye temperature is another question that we've been getting. Any indications on that? Last I saw it was plus 12.
I'm not 100% sure what the eye temperature is right now. I can get a rough estimate real quick, and we can see what it would be, but I want to make it clear to people this is a rougher estimate. But I'm getting about 13 Celsius, so
Yep.
still fairly high. And that's on the right side of the eye, and then towards the middle, you're not even in the positives for a majority of the eye. So
Now, this is the warning chart, the last we heard from PAGASA, last one that they've published at least. Signal 4 for large parts of the Bicol region, Camarines Norte and Sur, part of Albay, obviously Catanduanes, which... is this confirmed that it's Signal 5 there?
Yeah, we can confirm that. PAGASA actually tweeted that
They
on their
tweeted it.
Twitter. Yes, they tweeted it.
Yeah, they tweeted it like an hour ago, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, they said, as of 2 a.m. today, Typhoon Rolly has intensified into a super typhoon. Signal 5 warnings will be raised over Catanduanes, eastern Camarines Sur, and Albay. Catastrophic wind damage is expected. That is their words exactly.
Well, yet to update their graphic on it. This is apparently the 2 a.m. graphic. But nonetheless, just bearing that in mind, you can see the rest of the warnings there. Manila, under Signal 3 at this point, typhoon conditions are likely. And many other areas along the southern peninsula of Luzon there, the Bicol Peninsula, significant wind expected all along there.
On top of that as well, we got those Signal 3 warnings now extending into Metro Manila too. Those weren't there before. We had Signal 1s when I think when we first went live this morning, and they went up to Signal 2 before the end of our stream. Now we got Signal 3 there, so they are expecting typhoon conditions to occur in Metro Manila at this point in time, for those people that are in the chat and curious about that as well.
And the extent of all the warnings, Signal 1 extends down to the northern part of Leyte, and also for the northern coast pretty much of the island of Panay. Signal 2 for Masbate, part of Samar, Romblon, southern Mindoro. Signal 3 for half of oriental Mindoro and a little bit further towards the west. And, yeah, well, going towards Manila from there, basically. We'll do our best to take any questions. It might be difficult because there's a very fast-flowing situation, and you know, there's a lot going on, even though it's still the middle of the night, coming up towards 4 a.m. But this typhoon is deciding it's going to strike before dawn, by the looks of things, with landfall expected on Catanduanes in the next half hour.
Someone asking a question real quick, you know, one of the questions to answer. What are the wind gusts with this system? If I'm not mistaken, they're probably going to be in excess of 350 kilometers per hour. Is going to be your gusts on top of the 1 minute sustained winds of 315 kilometers per hour. So, you know, this is a massive danger. Of course, to Catanduanes right now, where it's coming on shore. It's not the largest system that we've ever seen. It's definitely smaller than some of the other typhoons that have hit the Philippines in the past, but its sheer intensity about to just come right on shore to the Philippines right now means that should be taken extremely seriously.
And again, you can see on our inset there the rapid scan imagery showing that the eye is arriving in Catanduanes. I have no idea what conditions would be like there apart from extremely bad. I don't know if anyone will know anyone on the ground there, but if you do have any observations from anywhere in the Philippines that you'd like to report to us as well, you can send us a message through there too. And tag us, start your message with Force 13 all in text on YouTube. And I will try and go and have a look at some of the Facebook comments in a moment. What do we think on the eye itself? Does it still have an extreme stadium effect? Looks like it.
I'd say so, 100%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Also, I noticed the question earlier. Well, actually, someone was pointing out that SATCON now has it at 181 knots or something like that.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's true or not, but
We'll back away slowly from that one.
and then the and also someone was asking about the CDPS scale right now. I believe the CDPS scale at the moment.
Is it still an 8?
Yes.
200 miles per hour to hit a stage 9. It is right on the border.
Oh my.
So, but it is a stage 8.
strong stage 8 on the CDPS scale, which is bad enough. Extremely powerful, destructive, catastrophic damages expected near the center of the storm. Could the southward shift have contributed to the 2020 trend of intensifying until landfall?
I wouldn't necessarily say it's that. The expectation was that at least yesterday and 2 days ago that it'd be weaker than this at landfall because of the fact that a further north landfall in central Luzon would mean more time with more land interaction with the core before it's really coming on shore, and that would lead to some more marginal weakening along with a bit more hostile conditions expected. What happened instead was the southward track meant that it was less time before land interaction before landfall, so it didn't have much time to weaken from that regard, as we've clearly seen. And conditions just remained extremely favorable regardless of that, which allowed the storm to just really ramp up since this morning to its current peak intensity.
Will Goni be the most intense landfalling tropical cyclone ever recorded?
Well, I'll just say this. I believe that the most intense would be Meggy of 2010. That was 885 millibars. I don't know if there are storms that are any lower than that, but from what I know, if this makes landfall with 800 with pressure of 876 millibars, like we are currently saying, then from my knowledge, it is the most intense landfalling tropical cyclone on record. But
well,
I'm not.
According to our analysis, Haiyan was 879 near landfall. It's even beaten that. And as far as I can recall, in terms of wind speeds, for anywhere in the world, you're going back decades.
Yeah. I think the 1970s was the last time we saw something like this.
Oh, Cyclone Winston in 2016 was the most intense landfalling. According to Kay here, that was 880 millibars. I assume that was its landfall in Fiji.
I still don't know where they ever got that information from, though, because we tracked that one operationally and it was only ever around 917. They plucked 884 from nowhere, I don't even know, but that's another story. But regardless, that storm was extremely powerful and intense, caused extreme damage. This one is going to do exactly the same in a different part of the Pacific. Just to reiterate, the signal number 5 is in effect. We thought that would happen a while ago, but it's only just happened. And extremely powerful winds in this storm. 195 miles per hour is the suggestion. We've only got suggestions at the minute because we have the satellite observations, which will never be able to beat direct measurements. So we really don't know what's happening on the ground at this very moment. Which part of the storm do you think would be the strongest?
Probably the northeastern quadrant would be the strongest, with the northwest running up at the second half. The south side is marginally weaker and also smaller with its extent of gale force and typhoon force winds from the center. So the northern part will be the stronger portion of the system.
Regarding observations-wise, I believe there's an observation weather station in Iraq on Catanduanes Island. So it'll be interesting to see what data that collects if it does end up surviving this typhoon. Keep in mind, this is again 195 mile per hour or 170 knot wind sustained Category 5 super typhoon we're talking about here. So it really all depends if this station survives or not through the eye wall.
Something I've done as well right now is someone actually commented on our recent video update with a whole host of local emergency numbers that people can use during the storm if you're getting impacted and for some reason need to call them in particular. They were actually verified by someone in the Philippines directly in our contributor team. So those are at the bottom of the description now. So if you need those whatsoever, you'll be able to scroll down and expand the description. You'll be able to find those and use those.
sure to refresh your page if you haven't. Sometimes you might need to do that if you're looking for those numbers if you've been watching for a while. So that's just something else to note.
Does Goni have a pinhole eye? If not, how close is it to being one, and how small is it? A lot of people are fascinated with pinhole eyes, but this isn't one of them now. Thomas?
Yep.
No, it's certainly not a pinhole anymore. You know, I mean, when I think of a pinhole, I think of a really small eye. I don't think of the exact width. I believe it's 8 or 10 miles is what you need for a pinhole eye. It's like 10 or something like that. That might be a little off. I don't know the exact number. But from what I heard, Goni never actually had a pinhole eye in width. It was a little too wide, but from my perspective, it had the appearance of a pinhole before. It doesn't have the appearance of a pinhole now. It's definitely a much larger eye. Regardless, still a smaller storm, and this is, regardless of how the eye looks, extraordinarily dangerous. And it's an extraordinary storm and a catastrophic situation unfolding for the Philippines.
Someone asked a question I think is really important to go over pretty quickly. They said, will the eye survive Catanduanes? And I think, a good way to answer that is just to go over the simple fact
Yes,
that
it will.
the eye itself is about the size of Catanduanes. So that and its current movement speed of closer to 28 to 29 kilometers per hour.
On infrared, it's about that size, but on the radar that we're looking at there, it's only about half the size of the island.
Nathan?
David, go ahead.
Joint Typhoon Warning Center, Advisory 16, and animated enhanced infrared satellite imagery shows a compact, dense, symmetric system with feeder bands tightly wrapped and tucked into the central convection that has maintained a 9 nautical mile sharply outlined eye. Outside the pinhole eye is a cloud-free moat.
Oh, they've called that a pinhole.
That separates it from an evolving 35 nautical mile secondary outer eye wall, prelude to an eye wall replacement cycle. The initial position is based with high confidence on the eye in the infrared loop, which is perfectly aligned with the well-defined microwave eye feature in the 37 gigahertz image. And they go on to mention image stacks vertically with the microwave eye, indicating zero tilt, light vertical wind shear.
Yep.
And they have the intensity at 155 knots.
No, higher than that.
Higher.
170 knots.
But but Nathan, I've got to mention this for all of our viewers. Vietnam is to, they're also in the firing line. So it looks like yet again. And for our viewers and the team, 63 feet wave height.
Quite impressive. Obviously, we won't be getting those heights on land. At least we don't think so. But the storm surge could be significant. What do you say about storm surge at this point? Surely the 3 meters that PAGASA have put out would be lowballing it.
Very much so. I think it's going to be like a Dorian type surge, so 25 feet or above.
Well, yesterday they were saying they're expecting 2 to 2.5 meters. Just based on the intensity rays alone, it's much more reasonable to expect at least 4 to 5 meters of surge now. The solace is that because the system's smaller, especially the smallest winds, or not the smallest winds, the strongest winds, are confined to a small area, that it's harder for it to whip up as much surge and sustain it at such a level. But it's just pure strength means that it will be able to bring a lot of storm surge. So don't be surprised to see a surge of at least 4 to 5 meters with this system coming in pretty shortly.
Nathan, the PAGASA is saying in their advisory today, rough to phenomenal seas, 2.5 to 16 metres will be experienced over the seaboard of areas where the tropical cyclone warning signal is in effect. Rough to very rough seas over the remaining seaboards of northern Luzon and the eastern seaboards of the eastern Visayas and Caraca, and anyone well out on the sea, but 63-foot waves, that is massive.
Well, let's hope no one's out on the sea there.
Yes, that's true.
This is 413 Live. It's just past 4 o'clock in the morning in the Philippines, and this is what we're looking at right now. Typhoon Goni, Philippine name Rolly, about to make landfall within the next maybe 20 minutes at this stage in Catanduanes. It currently has winds estimated of 195 miles per hour, which is about 310 kilometers per hour, 315 even. Or somewhere in between, and a central pressure estimate of 876 millibars, which is one of the strongest storms you'll ever see making landfall.
And just to add on to that as well, gusts, with the JGWC update, are up to 205 knots, which is about 380 or so kilometers per hour. So not only are you stuck with 315 mile an hour or 315 kilometer per hour sustained winds, you also have these stronger gusts that'll come in temporarily that are way stronger than that. If you're outside at all in a situation like that, you are just completely knocked out of your feet, not to mention the obvious debris that'll go around. Someone asked a little bit earlier what kind of impacts to see in Catanduanes. Depending on the areas that receive the strongest winds or impacts, and if it occurs for any prolonged period, that's where you could potentially start to see much more significant towards total damage if you get extremely unfortunate in a scenario like this. But there's really no way to say that there won't be very, very severe impacts on the island.
The radar frame just came in, and it's just even more concerning with each new frame here. You can clearly see the inner eye wall, and looks like the outer eye wall is about to come ashore here, but the inner eye wall is still off shore according to the radar site here. Just I just can't believe this is actually happening here. This is an extremely devastating and there's a catastrophic super typhoon we're looking at here. 195 miles per hour, or 170 knots, or I think what you said, Nathan, 310 kilometers an hour. 1 minute sustained winds we're talking about here, with even higher gusts than that, if you could even imagine that, with the minimum pressure. As this newest JTWC update, at least down to, I think it was 884 or 887, if I'm not mistaken. Something around there.
They're with 884 right now.
884. Absolutely incredible here. And again, there's Catanduanes Island. I know you can't really see it too well. I don't know why they don't have outlines with this, but I could probably make out some of the town names there.
What's the timestamp on this image?
4 p.m. Eastern.
So, just 3 minutes ago. And latest indications showing that the center of the eye is now 15 kilometers offshore.
The eye in itself is starting to come onto shore, and it's starting to lose its shape, but that's all.
Yeah, and a question about Metro Manila as well, real quick. Someone's asking what kind of impacts are. They are under a Signal 3 right now, so they are definitely expecting significant typhoon conditions potentially in Metro Manila. This bend to the west-northwest that could happen, that the JHWC new forecast depicts pretty well, although it does look like the actual center will be a few miles south of landfall in Catanduanes from where they put it on their forecast graphic. That would bring typhoon conditions straight over Manila proper, if not extremely close to. And then you're talking about other areas nearby, like Laguna, also getting typhoon-related conditions, where people are asking about them earlier as well. So not only is this a threat, an extreme threat for Catanduanes and Bicol, where it's going to be moving through right now, but it's also been going into other very populated areas in the Philippines that will be extremely dangerous to be in if you're there right now. The other kind of unfortunate thing, too, is that even though its passage through the Philippines will likely knock it down 2 to 3 categories, at least in strength. The fact that it isn't going over, the northern mountains in northern and central Luzon means that the core at least will be less disrupted. So they are now forecasting at the JTWC that this thing will remain a typhoon for a longer period of time in the South China Sea than before.
Yeah, you can see it there in the forecast track. They have it coming off into the South China Sea as a 75 knot typhoon as of this newest JTWC forecast count.
And that is, it's hard to tell what that really means, because the last forecast had it just leaving the Philippines at 95 knots, but that has it a little bit further on in its progression there at 75, and let's not forget the middle point there is 115 knots, so still when it's it's entering Quezon there, it's still a category 4 according to their forecast.
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly why people in the path of the system or vicinity should be taken extremely seriously. We went over a bit this morning. People were asking about, Leyte and back towards, more of the southern Visayas a bit. That even though they won't be getting typhoon winds or very likely even gale winds for a lot of those areas, that outer bands will still be bringing adverse and inclement conditions to many people. And just general track changes have seen substantial edits in where those conditions are expected in the first place too. Even a day and a half ago at most, we were expecting a landfall in central Luzon. Now we're seeing a landfall right imminently in Catanduanes with gale force winds reaching the northern tip of Samar.
Yes, they will be indeed. I think Samar might get a little bit better luck than what was feared, maybe, because they're on the edge of it right now, and it looks like the storm is turning west. So I think it's making its closest approach to Samar at this point.
Yes, and actually, as we're speaking, it's looking like the eye is starting to come on shore.
That it certainly is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we could say for certain, at least for Samar, that it is definitely less severe, more fortunate than Vongfong earlier this year, which, contrary to every computer model and forecast out within 12 hours, made a landfall there when it was expected to continue significantly further north.
Yes. But this is much more intense than that storm. Much more intense.
It's just incredible, the progression of this typhoon. Originally it was not even forecast to near landfall as a category 5. It was supposed to be I think at first it was supposed to be like a cat 3, and then a low end cat 4, then a high end cat 4, and then now category 5 typhoon here we're looking at.
Then even when it became a cat 5, we expected it to weaken significantly.
But it hasn't really at all here. It's pretty much strengthening up until landfall. It's just a really a serious storm here, and I really hope everybody is taking shelter with this. Your time to prepare for this in Catanduanes Island is gone. It's been gone for the past few minutes and probably hour or two here. And I just hope you're in a concrete structure, high enough away from the storm surge, and you're just hunkering down and waiting for this to pass. Of course, this is going to be nearing landfall here at nighttime, unfortunately. So you're not going to be able to see anything once the power goes out. And I'm assuming it's probably out for most of the island at this point. It's going to be a really scary night for all of you. But as long as you're in, concrete structure away from the storm surge, hunkered down, you're going to be fine. You're going to get through it. You just got to wait for it to pass. It's going to be probably the scariest storm we've ever experienced here, but you're going to get through it. And, you just got to wait for it to pass here. It's going to be a really scary night for all the people here.
Though time has long since passed for Catanduanes to prepare, you may well and can still prepare on the mainland. Make final preparations now if you're within the path of the storm, particularly within the eye wall. Make final preparations and get to the shelters, really.
Yeah, I would implore anyone as well that's either in Bicol, Luzon, or Catanduanes that's watching this as well, that with a storm like this, if you actually get hit directly by the eye, when that center is passing over you, you might have a time where there's no winds and it's completely sunny too. Do not use that to go outside. that's the time where you can get caught outside immediately on the other side of the eye wall and find yourself in a very precarious and dangerous situation. So please make sure in any such event that you're just doing everything to stay inside your structure, stay safe, and make sure, if there's anything that you have to fix up, or get a supply from somewhere within that structure that you're in, that you do so during that time. But do not go outside in such a circumstance.
So landfall is drawing very close, at least the first of what may be many landfalls. But the first one will no doubt be the most intense, the strongest from this storm, unless it's got a nasty surprise, but we certainly doubt that. Winds of 195 miles per hour, 310 kilometers per hour sustained, with higher gusts.
Yeah, I mean, on top of those two, we're going to have a very substantial storm surge for land areas that this is impacting right now, particularly Catanduanes, and that'll probably move into Bicol as well. Talking potentially 4 to 5 meters plus with winds this strong right around the center, particularly on the north side. But we're also going to be seeing rainfall, probably around 500 millimeters as the maximum, with more local amounts of 200 to 400 millimeters. So we're seeing very substantial rainfall totals from this. A lot of it will be coming down in a pretty quick time frame, and then you'll see the threat for mudslides, flash flooding, river flooding come in alongside all the other risks that are coming with this storm.
Just got new radar scan here, about a minute old, and the inner eye wall is just offshore right now, just offshore. Eastern Catanduanes Island, of course, is still in the outer eye wall right now, really firmly in it at this point. But the inner eye wall right here, this little kind of donut you see of those oranges and reds there, that's where you're going to see those 195, 170 knot, 310 kilometer sustained winds here from this super typhoon is in that little ring there, little donut of radar scans right there of orange and red is where you're going to see those highest winds here, and it's right offshore. And again, your time to prepare for this is gone. Just got to get through it the best you can here. It's going to be a really scary night for all of you guys down here, and hopefully you make it through this. It's just an extremely bad and dangerous scenario here that's playing out, unfortunately, at this point.
The record books contain over 14,000 storms recorded over time. This one, around the world, is currently ranked 13 for the most strongest tropical cyclone.
I think it needs to be mentioned that the CDPS is at a stage 9 now, due to the JTWC making the hurricane force wind field significantly larger than what it was originally said. It's going 52.9 points.
Well,
Wow.
that would make sense because the storm did get a bit larger, over the past few hours. But still, stage 9, that is insane. I think the only time I recall seeing a CDPS stage 9 was for Dorian, which ended up being a CDPS stage 10.
This storm very much reminds me of Dorian. It has a Dorian look, at least to me.
Oh, I don't know. I think it has. I don't know. It's more of a high end a little bit.
Yeah, I know people love recency things.
I know that.
Easy
I
to
mean,
remember,
yeah,
but,
it's easy to fall into the trap of all that.
I think this is completely unique in its own right, especially because this isn't stalling in one place. This is going to be moving at a relatively brisk pace, but bringing those devastating conditions not only to Catanduanes, where it's making landfall right now, but it also into Bicol and then into southern Luzon, potentially straight into the Metro Manila area as well, as we head into the rest of the day here in the Philippines local time. So, I mean, Stage 9 just really emphasizes the absolutely catastrophic potential and life-threatening risk that this storm brings. And, over 200,000 people were ordered to evacuate ahead of the system's approach. We've been trying to tell everyone that's been watching us to take all the proper precautionary measures based on what local officials are saying about your exact location. So we really hope everyone's been taking this extremely seriously, as really the worst case scenario for the storm's potential strength is played out right in front of our eyes.
Yeah, you're everybody right now in this call. watching in the chat right now is watching history in the making here. This is all I can say. Just history in the making here, and all I can do is just watch and hope everybody makes it out all right. This is just an incredibly deadly and life-threatening event here we're looking at in front of our eyes here, and all I can do, like I said, is just watch it and pray for those people and hope that they make it out all right. It's going to take a long time, I imagine, for the parts of the island that go through this inner eye wall to recover from this super typhoon. I can't really emphasize enough just how strong and dangerous this typhoon is, and if you're not going to take it seriously, as it's going past Catanduanes Island, I don't really know what to tell you here. It's 195 miles per hour, 170 knots, 310 kilometers an hour sustained winds here with even higher wind gusts. I don't know how much more convincing you need to get out and evacuate ahead of the storm. If we're not in Catanduanes Island right now, it's an extremely life-threatening and dangerous scenario playing, and like I said, we're all watching history right now in the making, unfortunately, here.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate in the case. Conditions in the rest of Bicol will continue to rapidly deteriorate over the next several hours. Luzon's not soon after that as well. So time for preparation, especially in much of Bicol, and Catanduanes is already over. Luzon, you have maybe a smidget more time, but many people are already asleep right now. It's 4:16 a.m. local time. So hopefully everyone finished their preparations before they went to bed if they were going to sleep ahead of this system's approach. I just want to reiterate as well, if you need any of the local emergency hotlines for the Philippines, these are verified. At the bottom of the description, they will all be there. So if you're a new viewer, they'll be there already. If you've been here since the start of the stream, you might have to refresh your page to see it. But those are all there for people to use in case they need them in case of emergency.
On our best indications now, the position of the storm is 9 kilometers offshore. So that's a matter of minutes then, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
Around 20 minutes or so based on the current speed then.
Yeah. We may have to declare landfall then, or just before then.
So I mean, you see the rapid scan in the bottom left. You can start to see the actual eye come on shore. So the east coast of Catanduanes is going to start to see conditions die down, and they could probably see a bit of a sunrise try to peek out if the timing's right with this. But of course, that eastern side will be just as strong, if not stronger, than the western side. So people should not ever use this as an excuse to go outside as the eye passes over. If I get people, will make jokes or think that, oh, things have died down, I have extra time right now. You don't want to overestimate yourself in such a life-threatening situation when right on the other side is back to 195 miles an hour or 315 kilometers per hour sustained winds.
A fairly small eye, moving at a decent speed, and you may not even, the way this eye's been looking the whole time, we've never been able to see fully down to the bottom, so it could be cloud-filled. So you may not even know you're in the eye apart from the winds dying down. And that also means you won't know when the other side's coming.
Yeah.
It makes it worse if this is happening during the night as well.
Especially the dark.
Yep.
Yep.
I mean, not like you could see much during the day, but it's even worse in the night because once the power goes out, only thing you're going to hear is the wind howling outside and trying to get into whatever building that you're in. So really scary night for everybody involved in this. That's going to be getting into this inner eye wall here. History in the making here. And I just really hope everybody took this super typhoon seriously. And for those that are still on its path right now, that still have a lead time ahead of this, please take this seriously. Again, 195 mile per hour, 170 knot, or 310 kilometer per hour sustained, 1 minute sustained winds we're talking about here. Not gusts. These are winds here, and the gusts are even higher than that, not to mention. So just, I can't really stress enough here how serious this typhoon is and how you should be taking all the precautions and all the safety measures needed. And if your local officials ahead of this storm are telling you to evacuate, you do so here. They're not doing it to make your life harder. They're doing it to save your life here.
Yep, I mean, that's absolutely right. There was 200,000 people ordered to evacuate ahead of the system's approach, and hopefully every single person, or as many of them as possible, took that, because this obviously is the worst-case scenario for a landfalling storm that we've seen for some time in the Philippines. People that didn't heed those orders are obviously putting themselves in incredible danger. So hopefully they were heeded. We actually have some information from the chat just about some local conditions.
Yeah.
So in Albay, which is in central Bicol, it's west, southwest, or southwest of Catanduanes right now. They say they're feeling the typhoon right now. So hopefully everything that you've done to prepare is already complete. Conditions are only going to deteriorate there even further over the next several hours, and this isn't a time to go outside anymore. So please, we're wishing you the best and stay safe there. And someone else is also saying in Laguna right now, no rain or wind there yet, which is pretty much verified by the satellite imagery as well. Unfortunately, conditions there will also deteriorate as we head into the day here. So make sure that any of your preparations are complete now ahead of the approach of the storm.
Yeah, within a couple of hours probably for that area. Isaac, any new imagery?
Not yet. Any minute now it's going to come in.
Okay.
And I'll let you know when it comes in.
So someone asked an interesting question. I think it's good just to emphasize this real quick too. Someone's asking, what's the population of Catanduanes? And as of 2015, in that census, it's 260,000 people. So it's not an unpopulated island by any means for the Philippines. If you want to think of a Category 5 making landfall at, arguably its peak, let's just use Irma for example. Barbuda only had a population of about 1,100 people. So you're talking about an island here for comparison that has over 200 times that population. So there's a lot of people at risk here ahead of this storm, and we really do hope that everyone took the necessary precautions and listened to evacuation orders that they were issued.
Gosh. If you've got any comments or questions for us, we'll try and fit them in. Start your message with Force 13 all in text, and we'll see if we can take some. That was one that was already answered just then. People supporting us, saying we're doing well. Well, we're doing the best we can to hopefully be of some kind of helpful service whilst this storm is doing what it's doing, which is unfortunately the worst that any storm could probably do. When this does make landfall, if it's still at 195 miles per hour, that would probably be, well, apart from Haiyan, it's probably the strongest landfall in the main Philippine islands.
Yes, and this is just unreal.
Still people asking where chances for 200 miles per hour. Let's not. No, those chances are extinguished now. If you look carefully, on the right-hand side of the storm, the eye wall or the cloud tops are decaying on the eastern side of the storm there. So this is not strengthening anymore, which I'm really pleased to say, but a bit too late.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate this didn't happen, say, a day ago it sustained itself, or last night after the hour replacement cyclone sustained itself. It's only really starting to happen now as land interaction of the core becomes much more significant. We're talking about landfall, it's the center of the eye coming on shore. But because of where the storm is, much more of its southwestern portion is already interacting with land, and hopefully that'll lead to very quick weakening. We are forecasting right now, alongside the consensus forecast, a drop of at least 2 to 3 categories. Hopefully it goes down even more than that, even faster. But because it's not moving as far north as initially projected, there's terrain will be a bit less mountainous, which is why the JTWC now is a typhoon for a longer period of time, and has it about halfway through the South China Sea almost, still as a typhoon strength system.
Latest indications we're getting is that the storm is moving 3 kilometers for every 5 minutes, and as of 4 minutes past was 8 kilometers offshore, so you do the math.
15-20 minutes at most right now until you get the center of the eye on shore and you have a landfall.
Well, hold
got...
on, it is 20 minutes since 4 minutes past.
Yeah.
So it's possible to infer that the storm may have made landfall at this point.
Hold up, we got breaking news as well. Oh wait, okay, never mind.
Well,
no, you already said it. It's all good. You can say it.
Okay.
Let's mention it. Yeah.
All right.
What are we saying?
Oops. So the end. It's about something else, but we're gonna go back to what we were talking about after. But I just wanted to mention that they are gonna start issuing advisories on Tropical Depression 29 in the Caribbean Sea at 5 p.m. ED.
Yeah, we have Tropical Depression 29L in the Caribbean Sea, so...
Welcome to
advisory on
the
that.
basin that's always stealing the thunder. There it is, Tropical Depression 20 whatever in the Atlantic
29.
Ocean, which has just been designated.
In the Central
Yes.
Caribbean Sea, set to develop at 100%, so may well be a tropical cyclone at some point in the next few days.
So there go more records for the season in the Atlantic Ocean, soon to be anyway, and records in the Western Pacific on the same hour potentially, with landfall expected at any minute of this storm with winds of 195 miles per hour.
Yes, our main focus should yes, but back to Goni. It's about the center of the area is getting really close to land now, and hopefully once it interacts with the land, it'll start weakening.
Take some more questions. When will the storm make its closest pass to Metro Manila?
Within the next 24 hours, at a certainty. You know, if you use the JTWC's forecast track, for example, they're saying that by 2 a.m. Philippine time, and so less than 24 hours from now, this is already going to be in the South China Sea. So your closest approach to Manila is in between 2 a.m. local time there and 8 p.m. local time for the Philippines. So the late evening into the overnight hours is when the actual center is going to be crossing that area. But of course, impacts extend substantially away from the center. Even if this isn't the largest typhoon, you'll be undergoing significant impacts for a longer time period than that.
Just wanted to relay some information. The weather station in Verac, Catanduanes Island, it's still reporting, and they reported a pressure down to 981.1 millibars so far.
That must be old.
That was as of 25 minutes ago.
That's in the edge of the eye.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's definitely much stronger. Like, and since it was 25 minutes ago, who knows?
It might have a, it could be a really deep pressure profile. It is a small system.
I think a good example. Yeah, I think a good example of a kind of pressure profile like that, though, would be U2 from a couple of years ago, when it was crossing over the Northern Mariana Islands. We had a situation pretty similar to that as well.
That's still an unsolved mystery, that one.
Yeah, that's true. But it just goes to show, how close these pressure profiles can be in these extremely intense systems. And something else on the rapid scan too. It's gonna be interesting to see if this fixes itself up. But it looks like the northwestern eye wall there is taking a little kink inwards. It's not symmetrical as a circle anymore, at least in the latest couple frames. I'm not sure if radar has anything for that as well.
That's just part of the eye, really. Not much to note on that. Bearing in mind how zoomed in the image is on our inset, I wouldn't read much into it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the radar, you don't see anything like that at all. You still see a strong eye wall on all four quadrants of the system, completely uniform.
That would either be just to do with the land interaction, so it would.
Most likely. I'm just waiting for new images here to see if we can substantiate whether the storm has made landfall or not. It's going to be any minute now, and we know where. It's just a matter of confirming it.
I'm hearing that I don't want to say it too early though, but I'm seeing people in the chats. Nah, I'm not gonna say it because I think it's too early to even say that right now.
To say what?
That people in the chat are saying it's already made landfall.
Well, it might have made landfall. We're not sure. We don't have the conclusive evidence, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if it has made landfall at this point. Landfall, of course, is mainly symbolic more than anything. The worst of the winds will have reached the island 10 minutes ago at least. And the whole island at this point, central parts of Catanduanes would be getting the northern eye wall, and it will round to the eastern eye wall as it continues through in about 15 to 20 minutes.
Yep.
Frame
And
should
then,
be coming in any minute now. Go ahead,
you know,
Chet.
I was just going to say, at this point, you're probably going to see portions of eastern Catanduanes see at least the winds and potentially rain as well die down for a bit as the eye actually passes over them. But because the system is moving pretty quickly, it's a little bit above 25 kilometers per hour right now in movement speed, and the eye is pretty small. I think we were saying under 20 kilometers in size, right? Um, in a case
so.
like that, you're going to have a very short time period where conditions are calm before they immediately pick up harshly as you encounter the eastern eye wall. And keep in mind, the eastern eye wall will be as strong, if not stronger, than the western eye wall of this system.
New frame is in. 4:30
Hmm.
p.m. Eastern, and there's the new frame there. And we see if I can stop it here on the last frame.
The eye's about 20 kilometers wide diameter.
There's the last frame, the most recent frame, I mean.
And that red area growing again, and look further west to some enormous rain amounts by the looks of things moving over Camarines.
Yeah, I mean,
And
someone asked
beyond.
about Camarines earlier today too. So, I mean, since then at least, we had that conversation about how conditions would rapidly deteriorate as the core of the system arrived on shore, and certainly happening there, Camarines right now. And as we go further west and north, it'll only continue to deteriorate where you are. So that goes for everywhere in Bicol, north of Catanduanes in latitude, all the way into southern Luzon. So if conditions are met there, or like someone said from Laguna, no rain or wind there yet, that's going to change very quickly as the storm makes its closest approach to your area.
And just so you have an idea of how the towns look of the areas that are about to get hit by this storm, these towns are not structurally sound, I guess you could say. I'm going to link.
Okay,
we
hold on a minute. We've just got an update here. As of 19 minutes past, the center of the eye is 3 kilometers offshore.
Okay. Well, anyways, what I was saying before, if you look at the post I just posted, ignore what the caption says, but the area, this is the area that's going to be getting hit with the strong winds that are coming on shore, and along with the strong and heavy rainfall.
Yeah, that kind of area. That's one image grabbed from Street View by the looks of it.
Yep, I mean, someone put this out online. If we're talking about, conditions with Laura, for example, in the Atlantic being unsurvivable, if you're not taking the proper precautions ahead of a system like this, it is also that kind of language. That is how life-threatening such an event is when you have a 195 mile an hour, 315 mile per hour sustained wind typhoon coming directly on shore at your location. So we really do hope everyone's taken every precaution possible ahead of this storm. I saw a question in chat. I'm sure, Nathan, since you're charting all the locations, you can give a better answer on this. Someone's saying or wondering if the system's still moving west-southwest, or if we've leveled out more to a westward direction at this point in time.
My impression is that it's leveling out. Let's see if we can just get a bit more of an objective view on this imagery. Now you've got the line, the latitude line for guidance there just above the storm's eye, and it looks to me as though it is almost due west. Slight southward element, but mostly west.
So leveling out in latitude decrease is occurring, really, and we should see this begin to move due west pretty soon. And after that point, that's when we're going to start to see a more serious turn to the west-northwest. And that's where southern Luzon, Manila, Laguna get into the mix of things a lot more than if this thing were to, say, just move straight west from where it is right now. A couple questions about storm surge as well. We talked about this briefly earlier, but there's always new people coming in and out. Yesterday, the estimate was 2 to 2.5 meters. Obviously, it's going to be higher than that now. The thing that will limit that amount somewhat, though, is just the fact that the storm is pretty small in size, especially those typhoon winds sustained, and those strongest winds are limited to under 80 kilometers out from the center at the largest extent. But just because of the sheer strength of the system, it definitely is possible and will not be surprising whatsoever to end up seeing storm surge above 4 to 5 meters.
Yes. And these gusts can go anywhere from, these gusts can go, I've heard up to 235 miles per hour, which I honestly cannot comprehend that. Basically imagine, just imagine like an EF5 tornado just gusting, like imagine just a burst of that.
Gusts right now for the JTWC update are up to 380 kilometers per hour. That's about 205 knots or 236 miles per hour. So obviously, on top of the sustained winds of extreme caliber, you're going to have those even more dangerous gusts on top of that too. So obviously for Catanduanes, catastrophic situation unfolding right now with landfall coming in just a few minutes.
Yes, it's probably already occurred. We're just waiting for the confirmation. But the last imagery that we've got is 15 minutes old, 3 kilometers offshore.
I mean, and honestly, to a very large extent too, the landfall itself is more of a symbolic note than something for broader impacts. Of course, we're still going to have to track the system into Bicol and Luzon as well. But if we're talking about a stage in the storm's lifetime, it's really just another step with it right now. Parts of Catanduanes are going to get a break for a little bit potentially, and of course the eastern eye wall is going to come back stronger than ever before for areas in terms of what kind of impacts they're receiving. That's where you could see potentially the Category 5 plus, sustained winds. On top of that as well, I know we've been talking a lot about wind and storm surge. We are looking at potentially up to 500 millimeters of rainfall for portions of the Philippines that are being impacted by this storm, locally more in the range of 200 to 400 millimeters. And when that comes down pretty quick, then you have enhanced flash flooding and mudslide risks as well. So, a real triple threat with this system.
The eye temperature is insane inside the storm on the last run up to landfall. I'm not sure what exactly the numbers are, but it looks impressive, at least only in one half of the eye. But, well, also though, part of the eastern side of the eye looks to be flaking a little bit. Isaac's got an image just now, I think. Is that Isaac's screen?
Yes, this is 2030 UTC.
Oh wow, this is 7 minutes ago.
Wow.
And that's the eye. It's getting a little bit, like, I'm noticing it's getting a little bit more cloudy than it was before. But I haven't looked at the past images yet, so I can't really confirm that. But again, this is from 2030 UTC, this image.
Literally in the act of making landfall in that image.
Indeed. It's really close. This is 2032 UTC.
2032.
Look at that.
Wow.
It's
That's an
honestly,
extremely powerful storm.
It's very solemn to see this happen, if that makes any sense to say. I know we're doing our best to provide up-to-date information and answer questions and stuff, but seeing an actual event like this occur, is a really sombering moment to watch occur, even if we're doing our best to provide up-to-date information.
And these are over negative 80 degrees Celsius cloud tops you're seeing here. That's all this yellow here. You rarely see that with a well-developed system like that. Usually you see that with sheared tropical storms or maybe low-end Category 1 range systems, mostly in the southern hemisphere. But you're seeing it here with a catastrophic Category 5 hurricane here and landfall here. It's truly incredible to see this.
Every so often you do get storms like this, but extremely rare for them to make landfall at their chosen peak intensity.
Yes, and in fact,
even
I'm
rarer
already
for a surface observation to be nearby.
In fact, I'm
True.
already seeing meteorologists say that it's made landfall, like professional meteorologists. So, but we're just waiting on like official word from like an agency right now in terms of landfall.
We're just waiting for enough evidence. It's literally doing it right now.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, and
As
I
we've
just want
said,
to
it's
give
only symbolic.
Yeah, and I want to give a reminder too to everyone that is in the Philippines watching this, whether you're in Catanduanes and somehow still have connection, or if you're in Bicol, southern Luzon, or any other regions that might be getting impacted. There is a hotline list of local emergency numbers below in the description. So if you scroll down a bit on your phone or on your computer and expand the description, you'll be able to find all those numbers. These were very graciously submitted by a commenter on one of our storm updates and verified by a contributor from the Philippines of their validity. So if you really ever need an emergency hotline number, there's a whole plethora and list of them in the bottom of the description that you'll be able to use in case you really need help for something during this storm event.
Yes. And I also want to mention that this is history in the making right here. This is weather history, right, occurring right now.
It's global history. We are probably watching the strongest and simultaneously most intense landfall ever recorded. It's only preliminary at this point, but calculations based off of surface observations support a pressure around what we've given it, if not stronger.
Yeah.
Okay, team, stand by. We've got some news to bring.
Landfall.
Typhoon Goni has made a historic landfall on Catanduanes in the Philippines with winds of 195 miles per hour and an estimated pressure of around 876 millibars. It could be a little bit higher at this point, we're not sure, but in any case, a landfall now confirmed for sure. But even at this point, it's not over. The storm will then be moving over water again shortly, and then moving on to Camarines, and still it will have a lot of oceanic influence around it, almost all the way to Manila. So what happens from here is down to the storm, how well it keeps itself together. Models suggesting that it will capitulate very easily, but, well, those same models never predicted it to intensify this much.
Yes, and I also want to point out that because this storm has made landfall, I believe there was, after it makes landfall, like it could sustain the Category 5 intensity that.
Yes, well, Haiyan did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well inland.
This will likely still lose at least 2, if not more, categories while crossing over the entirety of the Philippines in the next day or so, though. So we are still looking at, I think right now, at least the JGWC is expecting this to be a moderate Category 2 strength storm when exiting the Philippines into the South China Sea. So it's still expected to lose almost half its strength within the next 24 hours, but if we're talking the next 6 to 9 hours, this thing could still be a super typhoon equivalent storm, despite some land interaction. Just because it's so strong, it's going to take some time for those winds to actually wind down a bit, despite the actual land interaction that will undoubtedly be disrupting the core of the system. So Bicol, in particular, can still see Category 5 impacts, even though this is not where the first landfall is occurring. It's happening on Catanduanes instead.
Yeah, and I also want to mention that it's also going to be extremely interesting going back and reanalyzing this storm just to see if 195 miles per hour was actually the storm strength at landfall, or if it even got stronger, maybe even at some point.
I don't think it's stronger than that at landfall.
I don't think it is either.
Signs of weakening starting to emerge on the eastern side of the eye wall. Kay, what do you think about that?
Well, it's obviously going to be weakening very shortly if it isn't already, having made landfall, but to determine the true peak intensity, we can use a combination of surface-derived pressures and the satellite estimates. Obviously, we've had the satellite estimates, and they say 170 knots maxed out to Borac. But we can see what these surface observations support with regards to pressure. Yeah. That's obviously for the post-analysis.
Naturally.
You know, I've seen some, you know, preliminary social media posts about, you know, people in the center trying to record certain pressures and stuff, you know, on videos or whatever with their devices. But, you know, all of that can be done or hashed out to see how exactly the exact intensity was, you know, several months from now, even considering how crazy this year's been so far. What matters right now is that one of the strongest landfalling storms on record has just come ashore in Catanduanes as a super typhoon with maximum winds above 300 kilometers per hour sustained, with gusts above 375 kilometers per hour. You know, the level of danger that such an event possesses for the area where it's coming on shore, especially when a lot of the infrastructure may not be built to handle a Category 5 equivalent system like this, is extremely dangerous. So hopefully everyone that was ordered to evacuate ahead of this system's approach of the over 200,000 people did take that advice and get out of their low-lying or vulnerable locations.
So if you've just arrived, this is the breaking news that Typhoon Goni, Philippine name Rolly, is making landfall, has made landfall. The exact landfall moment was 30 minutes past. That's 16 minutes ago. And you can already see on the inset on the bottom left of the image that the eye structure appears to be failing a bit. I'm not sure how it looks on radar.
I mean, honestly, it's not surprising that it's starting to fail because of the fact that it's so powerful and it just, like, especially on land, it just can't sustain that forever, you know?
Yeah, and Catanduanes is very mountainous, so it is.
So, I mean, I'm going to be interested to see what Isaac's radar imagery is saying. I don't know if there's a new frame after this that's up, but, I mean, definitely some degradation in the symmetry of the eye, particularly on the western part. It looks like it's trying to close up a little bit, although those cloud tops are still extraordinarily impressive around the center of the system.
We're just updating our caption to show the, just to acknowledge that the storm has indeed made landfall. We're also, based on the latest imagery, reducing its intensity ever so slightly to 190 miles per hour at a pressure of 882, but we still believe, as far as we know so far, until reanalysis, that the landfall was at 195, 876.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the villages on the, like, right offshore Catanduanes, and these are structures that are not built as well as they're constructurally not sound. So I can already imagine what the damage is going to be like. I can't imagine it. It's going to be, I don't know. It's going to be,
yeah,
hopefully.
You know, as a reference for recent Category 5 landfalls at that category and well above it towards the upper echelons around the world for people that may be more familiar, Dorian last year made landfall in Abaco and then also Grand Bahama, but its actual landfall location for both of those was over not particularly populated areas of the Bahamas, and then of course
Strat, I've got to break in. The information on Tropical Depression 29 is out. There are no watches or warnings in effect yet, but they're expecting a peak intensity of 85 miles per hour on the 3rd of November.
That is pretty interesting.
They're expecting a landfall. It looks like, I'm not fully sure, but it looks like Honduras or Nicaragua for potential landfall as a Category 1 on their forecast.
So, I mean, right after Zeta in the Atlantic made a historic landfall for the time of year in Louisiana, and now, right now, historic landfall in the Philippines, another potential threat right behind it in the Atlantic, and that doesn't even mention Otsani, which we haven't mentioned once yet, but
We
could become
haven't.
another significant typhoon threat to the Philippines if it moves far enough to the south after stalling out northeast of Luzon middle of this week.
That's Sani there on the right-hand side of your image. It's all going on, so if you've got any questions about any of these situations, please send them in. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. Like 95% of our coverage is Goni. And there it is at the center, front and center of this image. But it's Sani holding on the right-hand side under Goni's enormous influence.
Yeah, I mean, it was looking extremely abysmal this morning. It's actually improved a bit in satellite appearance since then, believe it or not. But as Goni continues to the west-northwest at a pretty quick pace, and this moves, Atsani moves northwest at a slower speed and then stalls out. It's going to have time to organize when the outflow from Goni is no longer inhibiting or throwing over extreme amounts of wind shear over the system.
New frame came in on the radar, and the eye appears to be right on shore according to the radar.
Yep. A question in the chat as well. Someone's asking what will happen next after this for certain regions that aren't seeing as much adverse impacts right now. Laguna, Batangas, Manila, and some of the other areas up there as we head into Bicol and southern Luzon. The simplest answer is those Signal 3 warnings that are in place right now for all of those locations indicate the expectation of there being at least Category 2 equivalent. I think that's at least typhoon equivalent conditions with the system in those areas.
Well, looking back at these graphics again, Strat, that we can see on the screen now, obviously Signal 5 in effect for the landfall area, still not been marked by this PAGASA map just yet, but Signal 4 for northern Albay, for Camarines, Norte and Sur, and for the easternmost part of Quezon as well, Signal 4, Signal 3 there further west towards Manila. So yeah, you're looking at typhoon conditions pretty much for all of those places in orange. Northern Samar might get away without it, but maybe typhoon gusts. The yellow zones, that's Signal 2. So you're looking at basically tropical storm conditions in those areas. That's quite a large area, north and south of the orange those yellows lie. The northern extent, if I can get the right thing moving, the northern extent up there almost to the top of Aurora province, and then you've got the blues Signal 1 warnings which extend as far north as Ilocos Norte.
Yeah, so I mean, for areas we know from earlier, less than an hour ago, that conditions are still pretty calm in Laguna, even though it isn't that far from the center anymore. Areas there, of course, in southern Luzon, including Batangas and Manila, those areas will see their conditions deteriorate quite rapidly over the next several hours as the system moves westward and then west-northwestward towards them. And in general, typhoon conditions are expected there. So if you're under a Signal 3 warning, make sure you're staying up to date with information on your exact location and making sure that your plans are already complete now.
Question about whether there's a flooding threat to Metro Manila from Lake Laguna. Probably. We don't know much about the geographical area, but it's all fairly a little bit flat around those areas. I imagine there will be some flooding.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some surge caused by the system.
Yes,
with
actually,
Lake Laguna.
They're even talking about 2 to 3 meters of storm surge for Manila.
Yeah, and that would mostly be, I'm assuming, Lake Laguna from the east coming westward into Manila itself, because if you're looking, you know, the direction a storm moves, it just won't work the other way based on the direction that the storm rotates. You know, it won't be nearly as high as the storm surge that you're going to see, say, on Catanduanes right now, or into northeastern Bicol on the coastline there, where they could easily see upwards of 4 to 5 meters plus. Just because the storm doesn't have as much time to really churn up water there in particular and keep it sustained. But as the storm pushes through weakening, it can still push water from Lake Laguna into areas on the western side of the lake. So that will be a concern.
Question here, could the storm briefly strengthen before it makes its second landfall in Luzon later? Most likely not. It's certainly better not. I can't
It
see it.
shouldn't be able to. The disruption
shouldn't.
caused by land would not enable it to
Absolutely.
be in a strengthening position.
I would be very surprised if it didn't. I'd be very surprised if it managed to strengthen whilst a Category 5. It's got to at least get down to Category 4 if it's going to think about re-strengthening. You would think.
You know,
Yeah.
the thing is, though, because it's so strong already, such disruptions like moving over Catanduanes and Bicol will have more adverse impacts on it than, say, if this was a tropical storm going up to Category 1 status and briefly crossing over and then entering water again. You know, if you want an example from very recently, Malave or Quinta from the PAGASA's name was a tropical storm, minimal typhoon when first hitting the Philippines, and then as it was crossing water between the island chains, it was able to intensify because it was still more of a conceptual structural phase for the storm, and such land interaction wasn't as intrusive to it because it was actually weaker. We've also seen this numerous times in the Atlantic this year with storms interacting with Hispaniola, which typically doesn't happen, but in this case it did. If you have a storm this strong, land interaction is much more detrimental and will push it down and destabilize the structure to where it's harder for it to regain strength in a similar fashion if it has any short time period over water again.
Basically forces it into a terminal decline until it hits a certain point.
Yes.
Which I think it's already started. This storm is not going to re-strengthen again unless it gets back over water, but it will not get back to what it is or what it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and fortunately for Vietnam down the line too, shear's expected still to be much more inhibitive in the South China Sea as it has been for a lot of the past week and a half or so as we've seen these other systems pass through the area. So GTBC is expecting that even though this will be a typhoon for a longer time period than before, they're saying almost a third to half of the way through the South China Sea, that it won't be very particularly strong when it reaches Vietnam. They're not expecting any re-intensification.
But probably a lot of rainfall.
Oh, for sure. It wouldn't be surprising at all to see at least another 300 to 400 millimeters locally for areas with amounts higher, particularly in
That's
isolated
not what we
mountainous
want.
areas as well with this system, on top of what's already fallen from Malave in the past week.
What is it, Sani's forecast intensity, and is it forecast to make landfall in the Philippines at that intensity? That's a little bit up in the air at the moment. It sort of relies on Goni's track.
Well, and something that I don't think a lot of people have pointed out is the storm's compact core, and how tight this core was, and how cold the area around it was at points in this storm. Because people were discussing that they have never seen a core that tight in the level of the microwave being so low in the pressure.
The microwave structure was really impressive.
I mean, there is this very strong argument, based on the historical precedence of this, that this is, at minimum, a once-in-a-decade type system, and hopefully these don't become more common in the future. But
This
the
storm
rarity
is
of this can't be understated.
This storm is just short. In the main, when all things are considered, just short of Haiyan, basically.
And, unfortunately, this kind of goes back to what we were saying early on in the season, too. Back to the preseason predictions, and even during early parts of the season, particularly the very quiet July, that even though there wasn't particularly high odds of an extremely active Western Pacific season, we were saying much more average, that you could still see a storm, in particular, reach very powerful Category 5 status this year, as we had a complete lack of activity across these highest ocean heat content areas in the Philippine Sea almost the entire season. A couple of these storms will be able to come through, take advantage of that and the low wind shear, and become extremely powerful, particularly Rolly right here.
Just saw a question go by a moment ago about whether this will bring up the question on bringing recon back. We desperately want it, but I'm not sure anyone's going to go for that, at least at the lengths that they do in the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific.
Yeah, because yeah, in a degree, recon would have probably been a huge help with this, but at the same time, with the strong winds, it might have been really dangerous.
I just want to go back really quick to Atsani too, because I know we were talking about that. The latest JTWC cone has a day 5, the storm just off the northeastern portion of Luzon, about to make landfall as a Category 1 equivalent typhoon with winds of 80 knots sustained. That's around 150 kilometers per hour. So, a different region that we're seeing impacts on right now, and where is going to see most adverse impacts from this system. But Atsani is something to watch heading into later this week for northern Luzon right now.
To mention that the station in Verac looks to have gone down. Newest report came in, and the data is not there. It's missing, so I'm assuming it's gone down now.
Yeah, and if based on the location that this eye wall has hit, it looks like it hit the most populous area of the entire island, which is very bad.
Virac
the
probably
eye is almost the size of the
in
entire
eye.
island, unfortunately.
Well, half of the island, but Virac, I believe, is the largest settlement, and that's in the eye right now.
Yeah.
So, if anyone there's watching this for some reason still and hasn't lost power, please make sure you're not taking this as a time to go outside whatsoever. Because the eye isn't particularly large and the storm is moving relatively quickly at above 25 kilometers per hour in movement speed, you could easily get caught outside in very dangerous conditions, back up to super typhoon status sustained winds in no time if you're caught off guard, especially because it's still likely very dark with only maybe sunrise starting to come in. You won't be able to potentially see when things might start to head downhill again because it's still relatively dark. So please make sure, and this goes as a message to those in Bicol as well that are on path to get hit by this next, to make sure you're not spending the time, if you're under the eye of this system, going outdoors or being reckless whatsoever.
The new radar frame just came in now, about 2 minutes old, and it shows the outer eye in portions of extreme southeast Catanduanes Island right now. Really textbook looking typhoon there on radar imagery. And again, this is 2 minutes old, and from looking at the radar quickly, it looks like it's heading right for Virac. By the looks of it, there, at least they're going to get in part of the eye of this extremely dangerous Category 5 super typhoon here. And just really textbook appearance. You can see all this red here. Keep in mind, this is where you're going to see those 195, 170 knot, 310 kilometer 1 minute sustained winds here with even higher gusts than that too. We're talking about gusts up to at least from the JTWC forecast up to 205 knots, or about 235 or 36 miles per hour. I'm not too sure what that would be in kilometers an hour, but I'm assuming that would be also around 330 or 340 kilometers an hour, if I had to guess. So still a serious storm here, and you can just see how much of a textbook eye the system has as it's progressing through Catanduanes, southern parts of Catanduanes Island here.
It's just after 5 a.m. in the Philippines right now, 5:04, just coming up to here, and we announced that the storm had made landfall at about 4:30 as a 195 mile per hour Category 5 typhoon with incredible ferocity and strength and intensity, with the pressure down at around 876 millibars. We're keeping it at 882 with a wind speed of 190 miles per hour. The gradual weakening process begins, although it's all too late for many areas in the Bicol region and beyond, where it could still deliver more than just typhoon conditions in other parts of Luzon, further towards the west Manila could get typhoon conditions and areas around there as well, with higher gusts.
Yeah. It's just absolutely staggering that this storm came to be so fast, especially with it landfalling so fast as well. Really were expecting it to be landfalling much later on than what it does.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a situation where when this storm was forming, it was still disturbance, and that was hard to believe less than a week ago, about 5 days ago. It was expected to be a minimal tropical storm or still a disturbance when passing through the Philippines at a further south latitude. The storm organized quicker than expected and is expected at that point to potentially be a minimal typhoon when passing through the central Philippines. And then when it started gaining steam, the intensity estimate for the Philippines just went up and up and up. But even almost 48 hours ago, when this first reached Category 5 status, the expectation was that this would weaken substantially before landfall, and that at that point in time, almost 2 days ago, that it was nearing its peak intensity, and that IWL replacement cycles, environmental conditions, some land interaction would contribute to some weakening before the system came on shore. The fact that despite some fluctuations in intensity yesterday, this storm has been able to completely shatter all previous expectations and intensify almost all the way up till landfall today and be one of the strongest storms on record in the entire world is something that is hard to overstate the unexpected nature of that, but also just the severity of impacts that are going to be occurring because of that in Catanduanes right now.
As we mentioned earlier, out of 14,100 storms in our database, this made landfall as the 13th strongest out of all of them. And in the Western Pacific, that's the 12th strongest, with decent records going back further than you think, back to 1884. And we've not seen anything near that apart from Haiyan on the main islands, and you might want to throw in Meranti as well.
I'd like to note that PAGASA has confirmed, at least for what they think, the storm has made landfall at 4:50 in the morning local time
4:50
for the Philippines. They confirmed landfall at 4:50 in the morning local time. PAGASA has.
That would be about 15 minutes ago or so.
Yep. Just about. And now we're going to see this push in, emerge briefly over water again between Catanduanes and Bicol, and then make a second, probably still super typhoon or Category 5 system at that time landfall in Bicol within the next less than 6 hours.
Yeah, easily. Unfortunately so.
I mean, this is,
Just the latest rapid scan shows that the eye is really shriveling up.
Yeah, if there's any silver lining, the fact that it's so strong means that land interaction and rougher environmental conditions will be easier in capitulating the system. Although, notably, it does take time for winds to drop to match satellite appearance, even if it is rapid weakening. So, I mean, you're almost certainly not at peak intensity anymore from, right before landfall and at landfall at, one of the lowest pressures we've really ever seen. In the top 20, and same with winds for a landfall storm. But it's still likely going to be a super typhoon coming through nonetheless. And we're talking, still for Bicol heading up 4 to 5 meters plus a storm surge. For Catanduanes still storm surge, these extreme winds with signal 5 warnings in place for one of the first times on record, and rainfall of at least 200 to 400 millimeters over regional widespread areas with localized maximums up to 500 millimeters. Bringing that substantial risk for flash flooding, mudslides, river flooding, on top of all the other devastating impacts that this storm is bringing right now.
Yeah. If there is any, of course, like you said, silver lining, it is now the storm should be continuing to weaken here. I hope it doesn't try to maintain its intensity here. It should be doing, what common typhoons of this kind of Category 5 intensity do. Not of this magnitude, of course, but what, storms of super typhoon intensity do.
You're even doubting yourself, aren't you, Isaac?
Well, I mean, this storm has exceeded, every expectation we expected this to make landfall, like, what was it at first? I think a low-end Cat 4, I want to say at first. And then, we thought it would make a high-end Cat 4 landfall. Then we thought maybe it may make a low-end Cat 5 landfall. And now we're looking right now at a high-end, about as high as you could go, Category 5 Super Typhoon landfall here over the Philippines here. And again, we're watching history at this moment here. This is a record-breaking system here. And all you can really do is just hope and pray for the people in Catanduanes Island that are going to be getting into this inner eye wall here and into their eye, that they're being safe here and that they're taking shelter, and they heeded all the warnings and information that they should have heeded days ago.
And I do want to just point out as well again, for those that are new to the stream right now, that if you are new, and scroll down the description by expanding on your computer, on your phone, below the whole synopsis and description of what's going on, there is a whole list of local emergency numbers for the Philippines that was very graciously submitted by a commenter on one of our update videos, verified by one of our contributors that is in the Philippines. So if for some reason you're in an emergency situation where any of these apply to you, make sure you're using them in an emergency situation only, of course, but those are there as a resource in case you need them for some reason.
Just changing gears for a moment here, Tropical Depression 29, which has formed in the Atlantic Ocean. This is the National Hurricane Center's forecast cone. They seem somewhat convinced that it's going to hit Central America, not going to do what some models are suggesting and maybe shooting off towards the north. We certainly hope that doesn't happen. They seem fairly sure that it will die off over Honduras.
I know there were some model splits yesterday and even this morning trying to say that it would try to recurve back up towards Cuba even, or the Gulf of Mexico, but I haven't been paying particular attention just because Raleigh here has been such an extreme storm that's needed the utmost attention. But
as we can see, we never forget anything. That is Tropical Depression 29 in the Atlantic, which will probably only be giving brief mentions in light of this historical typhoon impact, and people who know us, who have been following us for a while, will know that we're not the kind of people who spin things very much, if at all, or hype things up. This is inarguably a historic typhoon landfall. As I said, the 13th strongest storm in the world, in world history that we know of, that's been recorded, making landfall at its peak, with winds of 195 miles per hour earlier, 310 kilometers per hour sustained, and the minimum pressure at 876, which I think that still hasn't sunk in for many of us. That's just 6 millibars off the all-time record officially set by Typhoon Tip 41 years ago.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to really get some perspective on the rarity and how strong the system is when coming on shore, because if just saying it out loud really brings the danger. But I think a lot of people are almost in shock that such an event has occurred contrary to expectations. But like you said, out of the database, number 13 out of over 14,000 entries, that puts you well into the top 0.1%.
Will it be the same URL, I hope?
Yes.
Oh, it's back.
All right.
We're on the air. We're good. Now that is a
yes, we're back on
incident.
Yeah, there we are. But again, an extremely dangerous typhoon has just made landfall in the Philippines. We currently have the storm at 190 miles per hour, 882 millibars. We're going to be taking questions here, but I don't remember what exactly we were talking about before. But
we should explain what happened.
Yeah, so Nathan, what exactly did happen?
Technical difficulties decided that they would strike at that particular moment. So I don't trust what we have here right now, so we're over with Thomas running the stream, so I'll let you take the lead on this from here on in, as we continue to watch this storm, and that will allow me to go over and take some questions on the other side as well.
Yeah, go ahead and take some questions, see what's going on there. But yeah, I mean, Goni, just an incredible record-breaking storm. We have Signal 5 warnings in effect according to PAGASA right now. This is an extraordinary situation. Again, a 195-mile-per-hour landfall, just astonishing. And the storm is projected to make its next landfall probably in the next 1 to 2 hours here after it passes through Catanduanes. We should have some new graphics coming out here shortly that I'll be presenting regarding Goni as well. We have a new cone, key messages, and tropical storm force wind probability graphic that should be going up on social media shortly. But before that, let's just take a look at them here. This is the new cone that I have just finished making before starting this, and you can see here again 190 miles per hour, 882 millibars. Expectation is that the storm may still be a Category 5 in 12 hours time. We'll see that satellite appearance really starting to fall off. The expectation of weakening wasn't quite expected to be as quickly as it looks like it might, so I would say 160, 155 possible in 12 hours, but within a day or so, the expectation is the storm being almost right over Manila, just south of Manila, with winds of 110 miles per hour, so an extremely dangerous storm for Manila, and a still just really dangerous over there. Very damaging storm nonetheless, despite the category rating still going to be extremely dangerous, producing heavy rainfall and extremely strong winds. After that, the storm's expected to weaken into a typhoon as it heads into the South China Sea and make landfall in Vietnam as a Stage 5 on the CDPS scale, 50 miles per hour as a tropical storm. Alright, do we have any questions at this time?
Well, I'm still on my way to find out, as none of this stuff is updated yet over here. And obviously I've lost visual of the storm as well, but just a reminder that it did make landfall at 4:30 roughly, we're thinking. That's nearly an hour ago. There is a question there now. Will Goni surpass Mahina in 1899 for the largest storm surge ever?
Probably not, almost certainly not, just because the core is very small. It isn't, at least compared to other powerful tropical cyclones that we've seen before. I think Mankut's a good example of a much larger system that could generate much more surge. Compared to yesterday, the storm surge expectations are up substantially. Yesterday was expecting 2 to 2.5 meters of storm surge. That's up to at least 4 to 5 meters, and it would not be surprising whatsoever to see in some areas, particularly on Catanduanes, north of where this exact center made landfall, but still in the eyewall to see higher surge and going into Bicol as well. But you won't see a record break from this one in that regard.
Yeah, certainly there.
Estimated time of arrival for Manila. I'm trying to still get a handle on exactly when that's going to be. Best indication so far is probably we're still a good 6, maybe 6 to 9 hours away.
Yeah, but the storm is
more with 6.
From Manila as well, that's going to be within 12 to 24 hours, really, from now at least, that the worst of the storm's occurring.
You sure? I think it might be sooner than that.
It's going to be in the Philippine Sea by the time we get to 24 hours from now, but it's not going to be over Manila at the 12-hour point. However, satellite imagery shows the message that areas in southern Luzon are going to start to see conditions deteriorate quite quickly now as the core of the system. You can see the cloud cover and those cloud tops starting to come over. Things are going to get much worse there as we head through the rest of the morning into the afternoon.
I'd like to note on radar, as the latest frame, it looks like the radar has the eye much due south of Bato on the island of Catanduanes Island here. But still over land, but it looks a bit on radar. So radar is pretty much also confirming the landfall here, but it looks a bit too.
Yeah. I just wanted to clear something off as well, because right before a connection got cut off for a bit, I said 0.1%, and people were wondering what that was about. That means that this is 0.1% of all storms in terms of intensity and landfall at landfall. So, that based on about having a, around 100 storms a year. It's a little bit less than that typically. That would make this around a once-a-decade event to see such a thing occur. So that really goes to show the extremity of this situation.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that's extremely rare. If you had asked any of us yesterday if something like this could happen, I think all of us would have looked at you like you were a crazy person for the possibility of a 195 mile per hour landfall. Yesterday, we were thinking, as an eyewall replacement cycle was taking place, that eye was going to collapse and we were going to see a weakening from there on in. And since then, the storm has definitely proved us wrong. But hopefully this is it. This is the end for its strengthening, and from this point forward, we're going to be seeing weakening from now on. I'm nearly certain that's the case. Isaac, you have some radar imagery here. What's going on in this image?
Well, you can see in this loop here how the storm's progressed with time, continuing its southwestern motion there by the looks of it. The eye, like I said, is pretty much due south of the city of Bato on Catanduanes Island there. And radar still, well, not still, but radar is also confirming, like PAGASA said, and also what we said earlier, that the storm has indeed made landfall here on radar. And you can see also, if I zoom in a little bit here, see if it'll let me before it decides to freak out. See if I can zoom in here. Apparently I can't. Okay, there it is. You can see Verac Airport there, right smack dab in the middle of the eye wall there, the inner eye wall there. Let me see if I can stop it here. Verac Airport, right smack dab in the middle of that inner eye wall, and the city of Verac proper looks to be in dead center in the middle of the eye wall here, and they're certainly going to get the calm this typhoon has. And of course, if somehow anybody down there is able to get a connection down there and is able to hear us or able to, just get internet connection, if we do get into this eye here, don't go around and survey the damage when this eye goes over you. This is still during a nighttime typhoon as well here too, so you're not going to be really able to see much, if anything. Maybe some lightning being illuminated along illuminating the eye wall here, but that's pretty much going to be about it. So when you do get into the eye, don't travel out. Stay where you are, and then wait for the secondary eye wall to come in. And then once that secondary eye wall comes in, wait a few more hours till the actual storm passes through, and you can then assess the damage and figure out what to do next from that point on. But at this point, everybody on the island of Catanduanes still needs to be staying in shelter right now. Still a very serious typhoon, and like I said before, we went off the air for a short time. This storm currently officially has 195 mile-an-hour winds, which is equivalent to 170 knots, which is also equivalent to about 310 kilometers an hour, and this is sustained winds we're talking about here. This isn't in gusts. The gusts are even stronger than this. This gusts are up to, at least in the newest Joint Typhoon 1 Center update, the gusts are up to 205 knots, which is about 235, 236 miles per hour, and I'm assuming that's probably in the 340s or 350s in kilometers an hour. I haven't done the math quite yet on that, but I'm assuming it's right in that range. So still
380 kilometers to be exact.
Oh, all right. So still a dangerous storm. Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, this storm is, something that I don't think any of us were expecting. I mean, it's been completely surpassing expectations, to say the least. There is a key messages graphic that we came out with just a little bit ago. I'd just like to go over some of the messages that were displayed on that. So just give me a moment here and we'll be able to pretty quickly do that. But again, this lands as a stage 9 on the CDPS scale. So, I mean, it's not something to scoff at, that's for sure. And from that, just to the team, what do we think the future of this storm looks like?
Well, unfortunately, continued catastrophic impacts for Catanduanes, and then it's Bicol, with major impacts going to southern Luzon. Although it's a uniform expectation that its peak is past now that we've had the landfall occur. We've already seen degradation in the eye, very apparent on satellite imagery, and it'll probably start to seep into radar pretty soon as well. It'll probably get knocked down 2 or 3 categories while crossing the Philippines, but because of the fact that it's making landfall where it is right now in Catanduanes and moving through Bicol and southern Luzon instead of northern Luzon, even though, of course, it's going to be very disrupted. And, of course, stronger storms when facing this kind of disruption will weaken a lot. The fact that it's not passing over the more mountainous terrain in central or northern Luzon is what's changing forecasts to say that this will remain a typhoon for a longer period of time in the South China Sea, even if it's not going to re-intensify by forecasts there right now.
Yeah,
Just got the. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, we do have the key messages here pulled up at this point for the storm, with high impacts being there. You can see clearly where the worst of the storm's going to be. Raleigh, a stage 9 on the CDPS scale, meaning that cataclysmic or extreme damage is likely for areas that are being impacted. If you are in the eye of this storm, you want to remain indoors. You don't want to go outside. The other side of the storm will be approaching shortly. Again, 190 mile per hour winds being the current intensity estimate. And Nathan, I'd assume you'll be keeping us up to date on those latest intensity estimates. But yeah.
Do our best.
All right. Winds over 190 miles per hour are likely impacting the Philippines right now, with over 5 meters of storm surge being possible in some areas. Very high storm surge, 4 to 5 meters. Rainfall over 350 millimeters is also likely in the Philippines. For Vietnam, we're expecting a stage 5 upon arrival in Vietnam. Wind speeds are going to be relatively lower, around 50 miles per hour. Still can cause minor damage. But we're going to be seeing major flooding as a possibility, with over 750 millimeters of rain falling there. Nathan, I do see you do have the warning graphic from PAGASA. Go over what exactly that means for each of the areas in their according signals.
This is the latest at 5 a.m. Signal 5 warning is now clearly depicted on the graphic for the first time. It's taken long enough. So clearly, Catanduanes, Camarines Sur, part of it, Albay, all under Signal 5. That is, virtually super typhoon conditions, devastating conditions. Signal 4, major typhoon conditions there as well. Around those areas on the Bicol Peninsula, extending halfway through Quezon. Signal 3 over Manila, and I think has that extended north a little bit? I'm not sure, can't remember now.
The Signal 3?
Yes.
Yeah, that has extended further north. It only was up to Metro Manila before, but they have pushed it a bit further north.
And the thing you'll notice immediately is that the Signal 1 warnings extend all the way to the top of Luzon.
Yeah.
And apart from that, I think it's extended by a few sub-provinces in Leyte and in Panay, and actually the very northern tip of Cebu now under Signal 1.
I'd like to say the new radar frame came in a few minutes ago, and Bato is now fully in the eye of this catastrophic Category 5 typhoon.
Wow.
Take a look at that.
Yeah, we're taking a look at it here on the stream right now. That is a very strong eye wall, one of the strongest ones I've ever seen. If you're in Bato right now and you're somehow able to watch this, please do not venture outside of your home. And you just need to hunker down. You need to get to the lowest level that's possible for you to get to, and you need to hunker down. Storm surge is not going to be, if you're in Central Bato, as big of an issue as you'd think, because you're going to be on the side of the storm where there's not going to be storm surge churned up just yet. But as soon as those winds begin to pick up again, I'm not sure what to do, whether you'd want to get to higher or lower ground here, because, lower ground, you're protecting yourself from the winds. Higher ground, you're protecting yourself from the surge. I don't know what I would do in that situation.
Yeah. Well, hopefully everyone's already taken the time ahead of the storm to get to higher ground, and then they can get to the most sturdy place and buildings at higher ground ahead of time. Like you said, and we've said it before during the stream, it is very important to reiterate, if you're in the eye, it's not a time to go outside whatsoever, especially when you have a storm which is moving relatively quickly and doesn't have a very large eye. You can very easily, especially when it's dark outside and you can't really see very well, get caught up in the tailwinds of the eastern eye wall when that comes back in, and that's just as strong, if not stronger, than the western eye wall, which came on shore about an hour ago. So you really don't want to get caught outside during something like that. You're obviously putting yourself in immediate risk by doing so.
Exactly. You're gonna see really calm if you're in the eye right now. And again, you're able to hear us here. It's gonna be extremely calm. You're probably just gonna have a really gentle breeze, if anything. You might hear birds chirping out there. And you also might, if you look around, which you shouldn't be doing, but if you look around, or you might be able to hear distant thunder, or see distant lightning in the eye wall surrounding this eye here, this catastrophic Category 5 super typhoon here. Since it is still nighttime, unfortunately, for this part of the world here, and of course you can see the city of Bato right there, right smack dab in the eye, and the city surrounding it here, still in the eye here. Just a really incredible picture we're seeing here coming out of the Philippine radar here, and this image is as of 8 minutes ago. It's going to update in about 2 to 4 minutes from now, and we'll get another frame. But I just wanted to mention that really quick here.
Yeah, and I do also want to reiterate as well for everyone watching. If you have cell service and are watching this, or internet, you're watching this, and you end up getting in a bad situation, in the description below at the bottom, there is a whole list of emergency local hotline numbers for you guys to be able to use if you're in an emergency situation and have no choice but to use them. These are submitted by a commenter, verified by a contributor. These are all numbers available for use in case of emergency during the storm, so those are there as a resource.
Yeah, for sure. And again, it's great that we do have those numbers there in the description. So again, if you are in an emergency situation, you can always check links in the description there. It looks like the eye is beginning to emerge, at least according to infrared, off the coast of Catanduanes, and it looks like we're probably going to be seeing our next landfall soon. Nathan, do you have an estimation on when exactly we could expect our next landfall?
Oh, I'll have to do a little bit of calculation on that, but the latest position as of, well, it's a little bit old now, but at 14 minutes past, it was 2 kilometers from leaving Catanduanes, so it's probably done that by now. And let me just get a little estimate here how it's done in 1 hour. Moved approximately 34 kilometers, so if it kept moving at that distance in the next hour, we'd be looking at landfall in Camarines Sur in about just short of 2 hours, a little bit longer than an hour and a half, but then again that was from earlier, so bearing that in mind, just over an hour then in that case.
Alright, so yeah, just over an hour from now we're expected to receive our next landfall. Those people in the Philippines over there are going to be receiving that eye wall here pretty soon.
Oh, I must say right now, a little bit of good news with new imagery that's coming out. The eye temperature is already up to the -50s, maybe even -60, and the -80s have disappeared in a gap over Catanduanes, as you'd expect. So that's where the first hole will be appearing in this storm structure. But the eye temperature already destabilizing and, well, dissipating on the infrared imagery very quickly, much quicker than we've seen other storms do it, and that's probably owing to the terrain profile.
Probably a mix of the terrain profile, because Catanduanes is pretty mountainous, and then also the fact that the storm's so strong to a point where even more minor disruptions can cause a more adverse impact to its core. I think we used Quinta from even last week as a much weaker storm. Such terrain wasn't nearly as disruptive to the system, and Fanphone from last year is another good example of where weaker storms that aren't as disrupted by the terrain can either maintain intensity better or try to build intensity when they re-enter water for brief periods of time. This one, though, at the upper echelons of possible cyclone intensity when coming on shore, it doesn't really have anywhere to go in sustaining its organization but down.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to definitely be seeing a downtrend occur here over the next few hours. But, if you're in, I believe it's Albay or Kermesse-sur, you're going to be experiencing the eye wall of this storm here relatively soon if you are on the eastern side along the border of those two territories. So, that's where Signal 5 warnings remain in effect. You're still going to receive a decent super typhoon. Nathan, do we have a new intensity estimate on that, or are we still keeping it at 190 miles per hour?
We have put it down to 180 and a pressure of 892.
So that is some great news to hear there.
Great news that it's 180 miles an hour still.
Well, I think that compared to 195, 180 is a 15 mile an hour drop, and that's in about an hour. So I would think that means that we could be seeing a 175 mile an hour landfall, maybe 165, which is definitely better than it could have been. I guess it's not the best of news. You're still going to be seeing pretty extreme impacts, but what I'm attempting to say is that it's good news that the storm is weakening, and I anticipate that to continue for an extended period of time here. As the storm does continue its movement into the Philippines. Burias Island is expected probably to get impacts within the next 4 to 5 hours, 3 to 4 hours. And then again, Manila, which I know is one of the big topics of concern, we're saying 6 to 9 hours for impact, probably 7, maybe 8 hours or so if we had to guess. All right, so that's the case. I do have to say, lately I've been noticing a southward jog beginning on satellite again.
Really?
If you take a look at those very latest frames, you can see that slight movement southward. That could be a wobble. We'll have to see. But assuming this moves...
No, it is doing that. Yeah.
But yeah, that means that that's good news for Manila. The farther south this moves, the better that is for them. But if you're in Albay right now, you could be experiencing a direct landfall if this storm does move farther south. So... that's not good news for them.
Yeah, the difference right now, at least, is it looks like if this trend holds, even if it's a wobble and it continues going due west imminently, it will likely have, up to an hour back over open water again between the southwestern tip of Catanduanes and Bicol. If this thing just kept going due west, it would have been at such an angle to where it wouldn't really have had any time where it was really over water, but this little jog could have some implications in just slowing down the degradation of the structure a bit more. Obviously, the eye is closing up pretty quickly right now, as Catanduanes has done a good job at disrupting the core. But this little southward move, a bit worrisome and just slowing down the rate of weakening, at least temporarily, before this comes on shore again. Regardless, though, anything above 160 miles an hour sustained, which is, I think, around 275 kilometers per hour sustained, you're looking at pretty similar wind speed impacts, regardless of if the wind speeds are anything above that. So pretty similar impacts still possible for regions if this makes landfall in central Bicol, as would have occurred in Catanduanes, where this made landfall in the first place.
Yeah, certainly. So at this point, we're just awaiting those future landfalls, and I would anticipate that we're probably going to see 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 more landfalls before this gets through the Philippines, assuming that we do get that farther south track through perhaps the central Philippines. I know that we are forecasting a little bit of a turn north towards the end of the period, but this has been defying forecasts now for quite a while. When it comes to how far south it's been going. I know at one point we had this being way north of here and still having not made a landfall yet at this point. So it is quite remarkable how much farther south the storm has gone than forecast. Something else
the models didn't get it until was it 6 hours before landfall? They only got it then.
Well, I think, what is it? 2 days ago, you're expecting landfall in central Luzon, even towards northern Luzon. So a shift now towards Catanduanes and now into central Bicol. When even last night we were saying southern Luzon may be trying to scrape northern Bicol, is really a substantial change and margin of error that you don't see occur that often. I guess one of the unfortunate things if we're talking about forecasting right now is the lack of actual flights going on means there's a lot less data that we're getting, and that means that unfortunately some larger errors can occur in circumstances like this.
Yeah, for sure. We do have bigger margins of error when assessing things like this. The lack of data can cause, bigger inaccuracies in the information. Regardless of the exacts, though, if you're in the Philippines right now, a extraordinarily dangerous storm is moving through right now, and I think that it would be fair to say that this is one of the worst, if not the worst, storm since Haiyan for the Philippines. Definitely the worst storm since Haiyan for the Philippines. And, it's a stage 9 on the CDPS scale, just like Haiyan was. Do we think there's a possibility that the impacts ultimately from this could be worse than Haiyan?
A lot of it comes down to the exact areas and population centers and how people prepared ahead of time. We do have to note that initial preparations were being done for a landfall in central Luzon. So the shift to the south, along with the initial expectations that this would be far weaker, unfortunately really gave people a lot less time to prepare. I know government agencies, though, along with us, have been really preaching out and saying if you're anywhere that could be at least on the outer rim of impacts, to take precautionary measures ahead of time and stay up to date with the latest information about your area. But I mean, I really don't even want to think about the damage that we could end up seeing in Catanduanes right now. We're talking about one of the top 15 strongest landfalling storms on record out of over 14,000 total storms.
It's been extraordinarily strong, and again, I don't think that. I think that some of us are still in shock by just what exactly is going on here. I know that I am. If you have any questions here in the chat, we'll do our best to answer them. Just mention Force 13, and we will be happy to. You just type the @ and then Force 13 will be happy to answer your questions there. But yeah, that eye really starting to collapse in those latest frames. Definitely good news, and I think that it's safe to say that the eye of the storm has definitely re-emerged off the coast of Catanduanes. We're seeing it just start to on satellite, and as we know, this is about 20 minutes, half an hour behind. So I'd say that it's pretty safe to say that the storm is, the eye is back over water, and we'll probably be seeing our next landfall here within the next 45 minutes or so.
Yep, and just a little bit of time to see what this will try to do and see if it stops degrading its structure for a bit while it's over open water very briefly before making landfall now in southern Bicol. And right now, at least on top of the eastern eye wall, ravaging Catanduanes right now, we see that gap in the -80-degree cloud tops that Nathan was mentioning too. Northern Samar is going to start to have the system pull away from it pretty soon as well as the system moves west. So the worst impacts there will start to recede in the very near future as well.
Yeah, which is definitely good news. And we're hoping that everyone has prepared for the storm. We've been imploring people to prepare, and I know, Strat, as you said, government agencies have been imploring people to prepare for Goni or Rolly here. So hopefully everyone has prepared in such a way that everyone is safe. We do have some questions that have come in here, so I'm just going to get to a few of those. How much longer will we be streaming this landfall commentary? I don't know, actually. Nathan, do you have any idea how much longer you think we'll be at this?
I thought you may have seen my comments. We're going to be finishing up shortly. The reason why is because we just need to turn things around and get more. We're hoping to do some more coverage later in the day in the Philippines.
All right, so we'll be back later in the day, but we're finishing up top of the hour then?
Yes.
All right, so we're just going to get through few questions. Someone asking, will the damage be worse than Haiyan? I think we've already touched on this, but overall it comes down to preparation and the circumstances of the individual towns and cities the storm did hit, so we don't actually know. Certainly this is the worst storm since Haiyan for the Philippines, though. Another question, could the eye briefly again clear out before its second landfall? I know we touched on this a little bit. I'm very skeptical. I don't think it's going to manage to do it. It doesn't have enough time. The eye wall's still going to be over land for a fair bit of time while the eye itself is over water. The friction's still going to be significantly impacting the storm. I don't see it recovering enough to even begin to improve on satellite appearance.
Yeah. You may see a slight slowdown or halt in the deck or continued decline in satellite appearance, but it's very unlikely in the next 45 minutes you'll see this randomly try to open up again. If that does, considering everything that this system's already done, I will still be completely blown away, but it's not particularly likely whatsoever.
I'm seeing it on the radar here. The last frame, the western eye wall really kind of rode in there in the last frame. Where the radar there in the Philippines. Let me see if I can stop it. Here. There's the last frame.
Yeah, and
right
you could definitely see that clearly there. That eye not looking anywhere near as symmetrical as it did, so that eye has definitely been disrupted, to say the least.
And here's the last frame before that for comparison.
Wow.
So this was about 15 minutes ago, and then here's now. Oops, here's now compared to 15 minutes ago. So yeah, the western eye wall is definitely, at least according to radar here, starting to give in here. Eastern eye wall, of course, still looks really strong, but western eye wall seems to be trying to give in here.
Although it is shortly going to go back over water, though the water's not exactly that deep, and it will interact with land again in a very short while.
Yeah. So, someone asked if Bato and Camarines Sur, which is in Bicol, would see the eye pass over it. I mean, based on the current trajectory, you probably see a close miss to the north, but you'll still see the eye wall more likely than not. That's on the western side of central Bicol, a bit further to the south than the current latitude of the system. Regardless of whether or not you get the eye directly, if you're in the eye wall, you're still going to be getting major typhoon conditions nonetheless. You're definitely under a signal 4 warning. Based on your exact geographic location, you could be under a signal 5. So please make sure you're taking everything you can do to be safe as the storm passes through your specific area in the very near future.
According to the radar, the city of Bato got scraped by the northern edge of the eye of this typhoon here, so they probably did see at least some sort of calm here. And then now, of course, it's going to ramp back up as that secondary part of the eye wall, the eastern eye wall, starts to kick in, and they're going to have to go through those devastating, catastrophic Category 5 winds again. And in this latest frame, also, the city of Virac looks to be in the eye at this point as well, too.
Yeah, I just want to clear up as well for people that are wondering as well. There is a Bato on Catanduanes that went through the eye, and there's also a Bato in south central Bicol as well, in Camarines Sur. So both of them are likely to see some major impacts from this typhoon, and one of them already has.
Definitely.
For sure. All right, we have some more questions. We don't have power outage data, I don't believe. Someone asking about that. Someone else asked.
There was a comment earlier in the stream in Albay had already lost power. That was a good half hour to an hour ago.
Right. What you can expect easily is that the entire island of Catanduanes is out of power. Most of Albay, if not all of it's going to be out without power. Most of Bicol will be losing power, and much of southern Luzon will be losing power access. Well, hard to say for the raw numbers, what that's going to be. Just keep in mind, anywhere where the core of the system tracks over during the next day is going to be very severely impacted. And, power loss is going to be one of those commonalities with it, but we should always be more concerned with people's direct health on top of that.
We just got a question coming in, and they also gave us a $5 donation. So I really appreciate, we really appreciate you doing that. And they're asking us, I have family in Rizal. Will they see the worst of the storm near Barras or Tete?
Now this location is at the top of Laguna Bay, so I do wonder whether it might be a surge issue there.
Yeah, if they're on the very coast, the west coast and northwest coast, in particular, of Laguna Lake, could see some substantial surge of up to 2 to 2.5 meters, based on the storm's trajectory and the amount of water that's going to be able to push in there in the time frame that it has. They are under a Signal 3 warning, so they are expecting typhoon conditions in that area. But as long as they've been taking the proper precautions, listening to local officials on how to best prepare in their exact location, if they were in a particularly low-lying area on Laguna Lake, getting out ahead of time if required to do so, they should fortunately be all right if they're planning ahead and taking the proper safety measures. The system is already weakening and will continue to weaken substantially. By the time it reaches there, it'll probably be a Category 2 equivalent typhoon, but that's going to be confined pretty close to the center. So right now, at least, this current continued southward deviation from initial forecast could mean that they managed to escape there with less harsh maximum sustained winds, but still life-threatening nonetheless if you're not taking the proper precautions up there.
All right, yeah, we have a couple more questions. We're just going to answer these final 2 questions, and then we're going to be heading off here. But the first question being, how do we estimate our intensities? Someone asking, do we go off of officials? Do we go off of the Joint Typhoon Warning Center for our intensities? We actually normally have our team do analysis and Nathan do analysis, and we come up with our own intensity estimates in a majority of cases. In this case, our wind speed did agree with the Joint Typhoon Warning Centers, but sometimes we do go above or even below officials, so it's our own analysis in a vast majority of cases. The final question being, and we actually have 2 more that we'll get to here. The first one being, when this gets to Manila, will it be a Category 3 or 4 typhoon? At this point, our latest forecast has a borderline Category 2. So a Category 2 or 3 is what I would be anticipating for Manila right now. If Manila does get hit, this could very well go south of Manila. And that actually leads into our next question. What is the track looking like? Could it shift? Could it go south of forecast? And right now it's currently going south of forecast, so I'd certainly say yes. This could continue to go south of forecast. And then I think our final question is, can this storm weaken down to 140 miles per hour in 24 hours? I think that's nearly a certainty at this point. So
it would be a shock to see it not weaken much more than that in the next day.
Yes, it would be very surprising, to say the least. All right, well, thank you so much for attending this eventful stream. We have watched a historic landfall unfold today. Winds of 195 miles per hour, pressure of 876 millibars. Catastrophic impacts currently are occurring. Be sure to track this storm using our 24/7 stream as well. You can go to that as soon as this stream does end. With that being said, we also have numerous other outlets you can check out, like our Force 13 Philippines Facebook page, which will continue to have persistent updates. Alright, we're expecting to have more coverage later today. Thank you so much for watching this stream. We'll see you later.
Force 13 has launched a merch store where you can support our project even more by showing our colours, just like this shirt I'm wearing. Or if the weather gets a bit colder, maybe this hoodie as well, of course. And of course, they go in all kinds of different varying colours. Or even pillows. I love a good pillow fight. Or even these amazing hurricane-themed phone cases. Or how about a drink out of this Force 13 mug? So you can find the wonders of Force 13's merch store online at store.force13.com. Ah! Oh! Who did that? After making its infamous landfall, Hurricane Michael is still a Category 3 as it enters the state of Georgia.
Yeah. I'm just running a giant ad break right now.